Hello everyone, today I'm going to teach you a very good and a very prominent aspect in Indian poetics or in poetry itself, which is we are going to connect poetry's elements with an Indian element which is called Rasa and Alankara, and we are going to master poetry elements, Rasa and Alankara, which are made easy and simple for your understanding. And so let's go ahead and study, right? We're going to unlock the ancient secrets of poetry analysis that will revolutionize how we read and write about literature. So let's go further ahead. What exactly is rasa? So now, rasa comes from a root word from Sanskrit, which means juice, taste, flavor, or essence, right? It is the flavor of the poetry. Rasa means the flavor of the poetry. It originated in 200 BC at around 200 BC to 280 by sage Bharat Muni in Natya Shastra. Remember, this is very important. Whensoever you're giving any particular details or information about any theory, you're going to mention where and when it was originated, right? So, what exactly is rasa? Rasa is the emotional essence or flavor that a poem evokes in its reader, right? Originating from Sanskrit poetics, this concept teaches us that great poetry doesn't describe emotion, it makes you feel them. When you read a powerful poem and something stirs within you, that's rasa at work, right? For example, you read it in a poem that a thing of beauty is a joy forever, and then you feel joy, being in nature. So that's what, it stirred something in you, it made you feel beautiful, right? It felt, and this feeling itself is rasa, the juice, the essence of the poetry. Okay, so the theory states that every memorable literary work creates a specific emotional response through carefully chosen words, images, and situation. Understanding rasa helps you identify why certain poems move you and how poets craft these emotional experiences deliberately. So, what does these poems evoke in you, right? So, the heart, the heart gets affected, right? So, emotional core, the feeling that lingers after reading. Book, a literary device. When you study poem or when you are into poems, you got to understand the beauty of the literature through the technicality of the poem, which is literary devices, a tool for analyzing poetry's impact, right? Other than that is reader experience, the transformation that occurs within you, right? So now there are 9 rasas, the complete spectrum. But before that, to make you understand rasa better, I'll give you an example. Okay. So rasa is all about cause and effect. How exactly? Cause means there must have been something. For example, if I went out and I'm kind of a person who's very isolated, and I went out and I saw beauty, I saw birds chirping, I felt the sun, means the warmth of the sun, I felt that, and there's so much of beauty around me, roses, and I felt very beautiful. So the cause was beauty of the nature, and now the effect I had means the feeling I had. Feelings means emotion. It is evoking something in me, which is emotions, right? It evoked emotions within me, so now it is effect. So rasa theory is all about cause and effect, because emotions are transitory, emotions are not stagnant. When I was isolated, I was sad, I was, my emotions were okay. I was low, down. When I came to nature, it felt beautiful. I really liked it. So my emotions transitioned. And that is what rasa is, the flavor, the essence, right? It's a cycle to rasa. What? Cause, effect, transition triggers rasa, right? It's all about an emotion. Okay. So now there are 9 rasas, your emotional complete spectrum. The first one is Shringara, love, beauty. Shringar Rasa, right? The romantic and aesthetic emotion. For example, think Shakespeare's sonnet or Keats' odes to beauty. Okay. For example, if you want to see Shringara, love, beauty, I will give you an example of John Keats' one poem, which is a work of John Keats, which is Endymion. An excerpt from it, which you've studied in your 12th standard, is a thing of beauty is a joy forever, is a Shringara, beauty, love. It is evoking love within you. So it is a Shringara Rasa. Okay. So now Hasya, laughter, comedy, humor and mirth found in light verse and satirical poetry. For example, for this matter, hasya, laughter, comedy, uh, you know, I don't really remember the writer, but I remember this work, which is Owl and the Nightingale, which was a satirical work of Old English poetry. Yeah. So that particular is one is a hasya laughter comedy, and you'll find a lot of examples. Kindly, when you study all of these things, now kindly find the examples by yourself if you've read any, or if not, still you should know examples so that you can connect it in exams. Okay. Now, karuna, compassion. For understanding, you'll understand. Okay, these are the types of rasas. Later on, you'll have to study it in depth. That's on you, right? So yeah, absolutely. So hasya rasa is a comedy. Okay. What do we use in laughing? Mouth. So also, yeah, I mean, you can, in addition to just add your words, you can also say that. So humor and mirth found in light words, and satirical poetry. Now, the third one is karuna, compassion, tragedy. Karuna means compassion, deep sorrow, right? Empathy, mercy. Deep sorrow and pathos as in elegies. Elegies is to mourn someone who died, and tragic narratives. Okay, so Karuna Rasa is to evoke sorrow, sadness. Okay, then Raudra, anger, fury. Okay, rage and indignation, seen in protest poetry and dramatic monologues. Raudra, anger. For example, anger in Hamlet's soliloquy when he finds out that his uncle is the killer of his father. So that is what Raudra, anger. Veera, courage, heroism, valor and bravery celebrated epic poetry and war literature. Veera, courage. Beowulf, yes, an old English Anglo-Saxon epic. Beowulf, that is connecting over here. Courage, heroism. Beowulf was an hero. Okay, his ancestors were hero. Now, Bhayanaka, fear, terror. We can connect to Beowulf itself. The Grendel monster was very, Bhayanaka. Horror means it evoked horror and dread evoked in gothic and dark romantic poetry. It evokes something which makes you feel scary or it scares you. Now this is not 1, 2, 3. Actually, this is 7, 8, and 9. But the numbers are wrong, so kindly forgive me for that. Vibhatsa, disgust or aversion. These rasas are to evoke something within you. Okay, that is all. So um, Bibhatsa is disgust rasa. For example, morning classes in winter feels like disgusting, right? Because you feel like, oh, I wish I would have slept more, sort of thing. So it makes you feel disgusting that, oh, I have to go, Revulsion used to critique society or depict harsh realities. In poetry, what did this rasa do is, it used to critique society, depict harsh reality. Okay. Now, adbhuta, wonder, amazement, awe, and marvel at nature's mysteries or supernatural elements. Like adbhuta, wonder, amazement. Like I saw something so beautiful, so much so that I felt amazed by it. That is what adbhuta rasa does to us. It provokes amazement. Okay. Now, shanta, peace and tranquility, calm serenity and spiritual contemplation in meditative verse. Shanta. I remember this one poem from Exeter book, which was The Wanderer. The poet was anonymous. So, in last, he goes to acceptance, calm serenity, and spiritual contemplation in meditative verse, which is connecting to Shanta, peace, tranquility. Why am I giving you an example of poem or some works? Because you should read them, because and that's how you are known as a literature student, right? There are some criterias which you gotta fulfill being a literature student. Whatsoever you're hearing here, you should be reading that, and you should be able to connect, and that's how you're going to remember. Okay, that rasa connected to that. Okay, there was something. So it is more good to connect with things, and it's very easy because just basic. I would actually give you a good idea about rasas, how to remember all these 9 rasas exactly. What I would say is, if you're kind of a person who is very social, you must be having a lot of people, right? So what I would suggest is, take your favorite people and assign them one rasa. For example, the one you love is Shringara Rasa. For that, I Shringar, I do Shringar. For example, the one you are very furious from, for example, your poetry teacher, or anybody you feel very angry at, assign him this Rodra, anger, fury. Okay, the one who makes you feel anger. The one who evokes that rasa in you is anger. So you will remember that person and the rasa very nicely. The one who makes you laugh, Hasya, so assign him that name, Hasya. Okay, that's how you're going to remember from people. Veera, okay, courageous, give it to yourself. I'm very courageous to choose English literature because, English literature is a mixture of sociology, anthropology, theology, history, psychology, philosophy, and so on. So you are courageous to be choosing literature, right? So like this, okay. Now each rasa creates a distinct mood that colors the entire reading experience. Master poets often blend multiple rasas to create complex emotional landscapes. Notice how a single poem might move from Shringara to Karuna, right? From love to mercy, empathy, compassion, creating a richer, more nuanced impact, right? Now, let us understand also, I would actually, yeah. So let's understand Alankara and then I'll give you a lot of theories to connect with Rasa itself. So, yeah, let's understand Alankara. Hmm. The art of poetic ornamentation. What is Alankara? It is the figures of speech beautifying the language of the poetry. Okay, Alankara literally means ornament or decoration in Sanskrit. In literature, it refers to the figures of speech and style devices that poets use to beautify their languages and enhance meaning. Okay, I would suggest you should be right now. You should be making notes and hearing me because I might be actually saying something which is not written in this. So I would like you to note it all down. Yeah. So think of Alankara as the jewelry that adorns the body of poetry. Okay, not essential for structure, but elevating beauty and impact. While Rasa deals with emotional response, Alankara focuses on linguistic craft. These ornaments make language memorable, creating a vivid imagery and add layers of meanings from simple metaphors to complex wordplay. Alankara encompasses all the techniques that make poetry poetic. Beautiful, isn't it? So, what are we studying in Alankara? Basically, wait. So, first of all, Alankara came from a root word of Sanskrit, which means alam plus kar, okay, meaning to adorn, to embellish, to make sufficient and beautiful. Okay, the definition of Alankara is a poetic device, enhances beauty, emotional force, suggestions of expressions. It is a figure of speech. Okay, and in Sanskrit poetics, it is called Alamkara. Figures of speech in English, which means ornamentation, and in Sanskrit, it is called Alamkara. Okay, poetry without Alamkara is like a sky without stars. Clear, yes, but not unforgettable. So remember this. Okay, poetry without Alamkara means a sky without stars. Means it's very shallow, the beauty is missing. Okay, so yeah, that is what it is. Now it has a purpose, enhances beauty and memorability of verse. Okay, function creates a vivid images and deeper meanings. Effect distinguishes poetry from ordinary speech because poetry has this beautified language in it. It is an expressiveness with beauty in it. Okay, I for example, I can just say, ah, the star looks beautiful. Or I can say, oh, the beauty of thy beloved star, that. So the language, the way you recite, and how it has a purpose, the beautifying of the language, which makes it more easier to remember and learn and, adore, sort of thing. So, yeah, that is what Alamkara does to our poetry. Basically, these two things are very prominent and, it makes poem poetry. It makes total sense. Rasa is essence, means the feeling, and Alamkara is how do you put with that feeling in a poetic language. Okay, so rasa is the heart of the poetry, the essence, and how you express that poetry is Alamkara. Okay, yeah. So now effect, function, and purpose, we've done it. Now the five major types of Alamkara. Now there are five major types of Alamkaras. What are they? Upama is simile, okay, which is the comparison using like or as. For example, my love is like a red rose. Okay, so my love is a red rose. Beautiful, right? So which is Upama simile. Okay, Upama Alankara. What is it? Upama Alankara. Repeat with me. Upama Alankara is simile. Okay. Direct comparison. We know all the literary devices because we are literature students, right? We've chose literature for a reason. So we know that already. Okay. Now the second one is Rupaka Alamkara, which is metaphor. Implied comparison. Okay. Implied comparison. Hope is the thing with feathers. Beautiful. We know metaphor already. Implied comparison. Hope is the thing with feathers. Hope is beautiful. It is a thing with feathers. It's metaphor. And this is a major type of Alankara. Now, Utpreksha Alankara, which is personification, giving human qualities to non human things. Death, be not proud. Means death cannot be proud, death cannot do these things which a human can, because I mean, it's a thing, it's an I mean, I don't really have the words to explain that, but I mean, yeah, it is a human quality to be proud and not, uh, I mean, it's death is not a human thing. So yeah, personification. Then you what you're gonna do is in Alamkara you gotta remember the actual Sanskrit names. This is the thing, okay? So upama simile, you have to learn it like that. Upama simile, rupaka metaphor. You gotta learn it like that, okay? And that's how you're going to remember it. Because if you just write English names, it's going to be okay that you know the concept, but for full marks, you gotta actually remember these Sanskrit names too, okay? So, Utpreksha, personification, giving human qualities to non human things, death, be not proud. Now, Atishokti, hyperbole. Okay, this is my favorite one. Deliberated exaggeration for effect. Like, I could sleep for 1,000 years. Okay, like after holidays, when you feel like, just one more holiday, and you would say actually that, oh, if it would be a holiday today, I could sleep for 1,000 years. So that is what, hyperbole, a deliberate exaggeration, is atishokti alankara. Now, slesha, double meaning, words with multiple interpretations creating layered meanings, which is double meaning. Okay, now Alankara has two major categories, two fundamental categories of poetic ornamentation, which is Shabda Alankara and Artha Alankara. Okay, two fundamental categories of poetic ornaments. Okay, all Alankaras fall into two main categories based on whether they ornament sound or meaning. Understanding this distinction is crucial through literary analysis and helps you identify techniques more systematically in your essays. So basically, we also understand Shabda Alankara and Artha Alankara. Now, Shabda Alankara are sound figures, okay? Shabda Alankara. Like Shabd means words, okay? So words Alankaras, ornaments based on the sound and arrangement of words. You see, arrangement of words. These lose their effect in translation because they depend on specific phonetic qualities. For example, alliteration. If I translate this alliteration into another language, it will lose its rhythm because, you know, the meaning will change, right? So Peter Piper picked a peck, which is an alliteration, which is also an ornamentation, which is also an alankara. Okay, so Shabd Alankara means sound figures, means they produce a certain sound, like Peter Piper picked a peck. Okay, then Yamaka, rhyming scheme. Okay, like a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Okay, it's lonely, its loveliness increases. So, for example, anything that rhymes, rhyme scheme, and all we are literature students. I assume that you should be knowing this. So, end rhymes and internal rhymes, Yamaka. Okay, you will have to actually learn this. And I know you're good at it, so you can do it. You just got to write it and repeat it over and over. Yamaka rhyme, like that, okay? Now, Cheka and Uprasa, consonants, repeated consonant sounds is an Alankara. Then onomatopoeia, words that mimic sounds like buzz, hiss, crash. Okay, so these words. So these are the examples. Shabda Alankara is sound figures, ornaments based on the sounds, arrangement of words. Remember, Shabda means words. Words means arrangement of words. Now this will, whatsoever figures of speech feels like they have this Shabdalankara qualities, like sounds, it evokes some certain sounds. It is Anuprasa, Yamaka, Chekanuprasa, Onomatopoeia. Okay, do remember this. Now, Artha Alankara, meaning figures, ornaments based on meaning and conceptual relationships. These survives translation because they depend on ideas rather than sound. Now, Artha Alankara means earth means meaning. We already know that, right? Earth means meaning figures. Okay, ornaments based on meaning and conceptual relationships, right? These survive translations because they depend on ideas rather than sounds. Hmm? Upama, simile. Now, this is what earth means meaning. है ना? So upama means simile. We know that already. We've studied that. Right? So upama, simile, direct comparison, we know that. Rupaka, implied comparison, we know that. Utpreksha, imaginative attribution, fancy personification, we know that. We've seen an example of it just above. Now, Vyatireka, contrast, emphasizing through opposition. For example, if I want to contrast something, right? So we are going to do that. Now, Rasa in famous English poems. Okay. Now we are going to connect it to Rasa again, once more. Real example to master our analysis. Okay. Now, Shringara love. This is the example. As I told you, you should be having an example for that, right? So, this is your example. Elizabeth Barrett's Browning's How Do I Love Thee? The entire sonnet drips with romantic devotion, creating an overwhelming um, sense of pure love and tenderness. So the entire song drips with romantic devotion, creating an overwhelming sense of pure love and tenderness, is an example of Shringara in Poetics. Okay, so how do I love thee? How do I love you? Okay, so from Elizabeth Barrett's Browning is an example of Shringara, absolutely. Karuna. Thomas Hardy's The Darkling Thrush, the desolate winter landscape and dying century evoke profound melancholy and loss. So this is an example. You got to learn these, okay? As I told you. If not these, if you haven't read them, then you can take my examples, or you might have your own example. Just learn how to connect, and so that if if it's relating, if it's relatable to you, you're going to remember that, right? With that logic, you will have to connect it with the works you've read. Kindly take a pen and a paper or a copy and do note what I'm saying, because that's how you're going to learn, right? So now Veera, as I told you about Beowulf, right? Um, Beowulf was a hero, and it was a poetry itself, epic poetry, we say. Beowulf, right? So, yeah. So, Tennyson's Charge of the Light Brigade, this is also an example, celebrates courage and valor even in the face of certain death and military blunder. Shanta, Wordsworth Tintern Abbey, the reflective tone and natural imagery create deep tranquility and spiritual calm. Adbhuta, I'm just reading these out because this is nothing new. It's just examples given that you can do too, but still I'm reading it out, so it may go, something may should be in your mind. Even if you don't remember the author, you should actually be connecting it to the work and what it evokes, so that you'll be understanding rasa better. Because what we understood about rasa is that it's a psychological flavor, it's the essence, it's the juice of the poetry, the rus of the poetry. So Adbhuta means wonder. The exotic imagery and supernatural elements evoke awe and amazement throughout. Right? Then Bhayanaka, fear. The poise, the raven. The ominous bird at midnight setting create mountain dread and psychological terror. Now spotting Alankara in classical poetry. How do you spot Alankara in classic poetry? Shakespeare's Sonnet 18, Upama, Simile. So these are the, they spot it out. It is sort of an exercise which is done in this. You can do it too. You can just have open Shakespeare's Sonnet 18, and then you can also by yourself, as I told you, I made you write Alankara. You can also find something, but not in this exactly, because if you find in, if you'll see this, you'll have the answers, or you can just skip it and you can confirm it for the answers. Okay, or you can just check it out so that you'll know. So in Shakespeare's Sonnet 18, Upama, simile is present. And shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Rupaka, metaphor. Thy eternal summer shall not fade. Utpreksha, personification is rough winds do shake the darling birds. Okay, rough wings and darling birds. Okay, then T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. Atishokti, hyperbole. I will show you fear in a handful dust. Okay, like fear in a handful dust, really. Anuprasa, alliteration. Son of man, you cannot say or guess. Son of man, you cannot say or guess, right? Then multiple alankaras layered to create complex meanings and mood, right? Then Maya's Anglios, still I rise. Anaphora, repetition. Still I rise, repeated for emphasis. Upama, simile. Like dust, I'll rise. Like or as is upama, simile, right? Rhetorical questions as ornamental devices creating rhythm and defiance. Now, what is rhetorical questions? Rhetorical questions is to evoke certain emotions in a reader in a manner that they question afterwards. Okay, it provokes a thought. That is what rhetorical question is. Okay. Contemporary poetry uses the same classical alankaras that ancient Sanskrit poeticians did, right? Spot these patterns, you'll find them everywhere in literature, from Renaissance sonnets to modern free verse. So, this is showing you particularly that Indian poetics and Sanskrit poetics is not something out of the place. It does connect with Western culture too. And these are the examples over here that whatsoever we are teaching you is not irrelevant. It is very relevant Okay, it is broader and it's more easier to classify it in Indian poetry, and you can be a very good poet with this too. Okay, it's more classified, right? And it does connect with India and with the Western world itself. Okay, now how Rasa and Alankara works together. So here's the secret that transforms good literary analysis into exceptional criticism. Alankara is the vehicle and Rasa is the destination. Okay, through Alankara you express, and through Rasa you live, you feel. So this is an analogy that Alankara is the vehicle and Rasa is the destination. Poets use ornamental devices to deliberately evoke specific emotion, means rasas and readers. That's what we know. I've told you in this beginning itself, right? When Shakespeare uses metaphors and personification in his sonnets, he's not just offering and showing off technical skill. He is crafting these alankaras precisely to generate shringara in the readers. The similes in war poetries create vira, yani heroism, while Gothic imagery produces bhayanaka, not bhayankar, so sorry for that, bhayanaka, which is fear. Hmm. Now, identifying the dominant rasa. How do you actually identify the dominant rasa? What emotion does the poem ultimately evoke? For example, take a piece of a poem, okay, any poem you can take, and you try to analyze the theme of it. Dominant rasa. For example, let's take The Wanderer, okay, a poem which is an Exeter book. It is a reflective era poetry. Okay, and the writer is anonymous. It is said that it might actually have multiple writers throughout because there are a lot of different emotions. Because in The Wanderer, the poem starts off with uncertainty and the loss of his dear kinsman and a lot of like that, and then in middle, he tries to have like sort of an internal monologue, and he tries to resolve his particular conflicts which are going within, but in the end he accepts and move on, and he says some lines very beautifully that a man who has not a man who has not lived, a man who has not weathered the life's harshness doesn't know how to live. Something like that, related. Not exactly this, but this is for example. I'm telling you that you're gonna analyze that poem. So take a poem, any poem you can take, not just The Wanderer, whatsoever poem you like of English literature, your favorite poem. Identify the dominant rasa. Okay, this is an activity for you. Now spot the alankaras used. What are the literary devices, the figures of speech? Not literary devices exactly, the figures of speech which are used there. For example, the five major I've taught you, or the two major I've taught you. Okay, the five major are upama. Yes, exactly. You'll revise that all, and the two the categories based on which we have those alankaras like Shabd Alankara and Artha Alankara, right? So spot the alankaras used. Which specific ornamental devices appear more? For example, some poetries are alliterative verse. Okay, like Owl and the Nightingale. A lot of alliteration is there. Beowulf is an alliterative verse. Okay, so spot those alankaras, connect the device to effect. Now, how does each alankara contribute to creating that rasa? Right. So how is that alankara evoking that rasa itself? Connect device to effect. As I told you, cause and effect, right? In rasa. So you'll have to connect that with this. Now analyze the synthesis. Explain how technique and emotion work together. For example, how those words the poet used evoke something so beautiful in you. It might have a lot of different interpretations, but that is what literature truly is, isn't it? When we have different things and different explanations for certain things. Now, the video has come to an end, but still, there is something which I want you to understand is about rasa. And yeah, it's not mentioned in this PDF, but it is an additional knowledge which is very important, and I think it's very prominent, and you should be knowing about it. So, how does it help? Rasa helps, and to connect literature. Okay, so it is the foundation of Indian ethics. Please do not ethics, aesthetics. Okay, I would suggest please do write these points as these are very important, and it will cover a major part of your rasa itself. Almost everything will be covered in your rasa then. So how does it help or connect to literature? Rasa theory, how does it help or connect to literature? Okay, this is the question. Now the answer is what I'm dictating, and you got to write it in your book or whatsoever. Okay, so first, foundation of Indian aesthetic. Second, audience centric. Keeping audience at the center means audience are the co-creator. I will tell you what you will like to hear, right? If you are a literature student and I teach you maths, you won't like it because, I mean, it does not serve you, right? So that is what it is. So Rasa theory makes it audience centric. I'll tell you what you need to hear and what you want to hear. Okay, guideline for artists. There are certain guidelines. Rasa will tell you what type of dialogue, music, basically to connect with the right emotion. So it becomes guidelines for the performance. For example, attire for Bharatnatyam. In Bharatnatyam, right? Not party makeup. You cannot do party makeup in Bharatnatyam. You gotta do that heavy sort of makeup and whatsoever it is, right? So every angle matters. Okay. Now the fourth point is philosophical significance plus spiritual relevance. It should have ideas, significant rooted ideas of rasa, realization, attachment, and detachment, right? And it should have spiritual relevance. Now, modern relevance connect to psychology, psychological relief, peaceful aftermath, psychosomaticness, right? It helps. Now, the sixth point is it helps in applying in our daily wellness. So, these are the six ways rasa connects to literature. Now, the impact. What is the impact of rasa on literature? First, it is an analytical framework. Okay, it is critically balanced. It has a lot of criticism also. Second, it gives you a richer understanding of emotion. Guys, if you gotta understand these topics too, whatsoever I'm dictating, and you want a different video for that, do mention it in the comment section, and I'll actually make one. Because yeah, I'm trying to sound very clear, but maybe some of maybe if you're not, maybe if I don't sound clear enough, you can actually mention that to comment sections. Okay. These were the questions, additional questions I thought are very important. So I was telling you. So now I'm telling you the impact in a very bulleted points way, because the lecture is already, yeah, I mean, it's of already 35 minutes, which is a bit too long. So yeah, analytical framework. Okay. For example, criticism is there, okay, needs more improvement, inappropriate, some suggestion from your side, so in arts you never get a 10 on 10. It's always a lot of criticism. Sometimes, sometimes a lot of people have different opinions, and I mean, literature welcomes everyone. So yeah, rasa here, how does it connect to rasa and what the impact? So rasa is you know you can connect it to rasa in a manner that it is a literature text. It has emotional depth, moves beyond character, plot, theme, setting, and rasa provides an us rich lens for analytical framework. For example, critical evaluation, right? For critical evaluation means tone and all of it, so we will need to have that rasa, the emotion which it has provoked in me while reading that, right? Analytical framework. Now it gives you a richer understanding of emotion. It puts you in that character. Okay, like read, you have imagination, you see everything, understanding differs, right? And so it gives you more understanding, more elaborative understanding, right? But yeah, it depends on different aspects, different ages, timings, and yeah, I mean, it is important, right? So now, comparative studies. Rasa is Indian but also accepted by westernizers. We merge all subjects. See, literature is an addition of psychology. Like in literature, you are not just studying poems. You do study history. You study psychology of the poet. You study purpose why the poet has written it. You study if it, its modern relevance, its political aspect, its religious aspect, its social aspect, its spirituality, author. So you study all of these things when you are studying literature. So comparative studies for that matter. Fourth, reader response theory. As I told you, I will tell you what you will listen, right? What you will like to listen. Focus on craft. Five. Craft text, poetics, prose, essays. Craft text means it focuses on craft. The impact it has on literature is that it focuses on craft. Poetic gives you, sorry, poem gives you rhythm, diction, beautiful language, figures of speech, right? So you focus on the craft itself. So now we are done and dusted with our Rasa and Alankara in detail actually, and you can definitely, I'm so sure you'll get full 10 on 10 marks in your answers if you mention all of these details really nicely. You're going to learn it all. And I'll try my best to explain it really nicely, but then a bit of hard work is done by you too. I would suggest you to watch this video twice or thrice, make notes on this, and then read it for yourselves and help yourselves and actually score a 10 on 10 in Rasa and Alankara. I wish you all the best for your future, for your exam, and whatsoever you're studying this for. Oh, thy beloved poet. No, not thy, actually. I've been, really obsessed with this archaic word thing. So sometimes it doesn't even make sense and I'm just repeating it outward. So, yeah, I mean, okay. Bye bye. Take care. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. So this poem was a thing of beauty, and it's, sorry, not poem exactly, but yeah, Rasa and Alankara was a was a thing of beauty, and we have enjoyed and learned and loved it. So see you in the next video, literature lovers. Bye bye. Take care. Good luck for everything.